Can I knit all of this yarn in 3 months? I doubt it, but I can try. Hi, I'm Katrina Walser from Oliphant and I'm a knitting teacher, designer and tech editor based in Sydney, Australia. And if we haven't met before, welcome to my channel. I mostly make a knitting podcast and vlog series where currently I'm talking about trying to get through my stash, but I also make tutorials as well as videos about various knitting related topics. So I wanted to make a video about my autumn knitting plans. It's currently the end of March, which means we're partway through autumn, and I have a bunch of plans. And I find at the beginning of each season, I know what I want to make, and at the end of the season, I haven't made any of it. And so I thought maybe if I wrote down or spoke aloud what I'm actually planning to make this autumn, then I might actually make it, and you'll have to keep me accountable as well. So just to launch straight into it, the first thing I knew I really wanted to make for the autumn was an entry for the Easter show. So the Easter show is a big agricultural fair that we have here in New South Wales, which is the state that I live in. And it happens once a year around Easter, funnily enough. And so this year, because Easter's a bit on the earlier side, the entries were due partway through March. So I've entered for the last 4 years. And this year I have one jumper that I'm entering that I made months and months ago. So it's a big cable jumper that I made for my son. And then the other thing I wanted to make was a shawl. So about a year ago, I went to the Australian Yarn Show in Canberra and I ran around to all the different stalls and found a skein of yarn from 5 different indie dyers that all work together. So it's all 8-ply yarn and the color scheme is gorgeous. It's this set of yarns right here, but also I'll put a picture of what they looked like skeined up before I started working with them on the screen. So I've known for a long time that I wanted to adapt an old baby blanket pattern of mine into a shawl. So the blanket is called the Southern Star blanket and it is a lace and textured stitch sampler. And the blanket's constructed in a way that it's 6 separate triangles that all radiate out from the middle, so it makes a hexagon. And since they were already triangles, I thought it would be a really good thing to adapt into a triangular shawl. Basically, I just have to take 2 of the triangles and stick them together and make a shawl. Turned out to be a little more complicated than that, as these things tend to do. But if you're curious about the details, I posted a video that was recapping that process last week, so I will post a link to that up here. Now, I just finished it earlier this week and it was due in yesterday, so I dropped it off at the show. It turned out so nicely. I'm really, really glad with the final product. The colors ended up being quite beautiful and the texture and the lace worked out really nicely together, and it was a good size in the end, which was one of the main things that I had trouble adapting from the baby blanket. So that worked out wonderfully and I'm really glad. I don't know how well I'm going to go in the show, but I'm personally just really happy with the end result. So the yarns are here, and in order of how I use them in the shawl, they're from Louie and Lola, who are a dyer from Tasmania, Daffodil Rhodes, who is from Queensland, Bombed Yarns, who is from Tasmania as well, and then Gather Make Give and Skip Rope Yarn Co., who are both from New South Wales. So it's also really nice to be able to represent a bunch of different indie dyers from different states. And yeah, I'm just really proud of my shawl. If you're interested in the pattern, it should be out sometime in May. So that was the main project that really had a strict deadline. So I'm really glad that that's done now and I managed to get it in on time. And so the next thing that I want to make is a birthday present for my husband. So he's having a pretty big milestone birthday this week. And I think this should be safe to talk about because he does watch these videos, but this should be coming out after his birthday. So he really loves penguins. And often when I make an amigurumi, he takes one look at it and is like, oh, that's actually sort of cute. I want one for my desk. But I've never actually made one for him. So I figured that I would make one for his birthday this year. And so the pattern that I found is called Buddy the Penguin, and it's by Brianna K Designs. And I got really lucky because it was the pattern that I liked the best, and it also just happens to be free. So it calls for DK weight yarn or 8-ply. And it seems like a really good way to use up some scraps because I have a couple of balls of yarn that are quite niche that I can't really mix in to other projects just because of the fiber content and stuff. And so these should be enough to make a penguin out of, and so it'll be good to use them up. So this is an alpaca yarn. I think it might be from Lincraft, but I'll put the details up on the screen. This is Zelana Rimu DK, which is a possum fur yarn from New Zealand. And I made a beanie out of this. I had 2 skeins of it, and this is all that's left. And so it'll be great to use up because I didn't want to have to buy another skein to make another beanie. And then the last yarn that I have is Morris & Sons Empire 2-ply. So I'm going to have to hold this triple. But there's a trick that I saw about how to triple up yarn that works really nicely. So I will try that out and I'll report back on how it works because it looks like it should work really well. So this yarn has a story. Basically what happened is that when we first started dating, my husband knew that I liked knitting, but he had no idea about what it was or what I would like. So he walked into Morris & Sons in the city and asked for advice. And I don't know why, but they suggested he buy a 2-ply yarn, which is not really my jam. So because of that, I'm still holding on to this ball of yarn 13 years later. And it seems like a really good opportunity to use it up now because I think that putting it into a present for him will just be like a really nice sort of full circle moment. So I will need one last yellowy color for the beak, but I'll figure that out. I can just dive into my scrap bin and it shouldn't take much yarn for just a beak. Now his birthday is in 4 days. And as you can see, this is still yarn and not a penguin. So I should be able to get it done, but we'll take a look and I will report back. But by the time I post this video, I will know whether or not I got it done. So I will pop up here on the screen or down in the description box to let you know if I managed to make it or not. Okay, the next project that I have is a present for my dad. So he also had a big milestone birthday last year and I tried so hard to be organized. I've been talking to him about this jacket for almost a year. Last April, I was like, I'm going to be organized and make your birthday present on time. And it's still not even cast on, and his birthday was in December. So I'm pretty determined to get this done before winter so he can actually have it for the winter because my dad is one of my biggest cheerleaders when it comes to my little knitting business. And so I'd really like to get him a pretty substantial gift. So I have already made my swatch. So I'm organized at least in that way. And this is Bendigo Wool & Mills Luxury 4-ply in navy blue. And I think I did the swatch on a 275mm needle. So this is a men's cardigan on tiny needles, and I'll see if I can get it done in the next 2 months. I have had trouble finding a plain stockinette cardigan pattern because that's what he wants, but he has lent me a jacket that he likes the fit of. So I'm just going to self-draft this pattern because given that I have a set gauge that I want to use as well as set sizes, it's just easier for me to self-draft. But if anyone knows of a plain stockinette men's cardigan that they can suggest if anyone else wants to make something similar, then please let us know because I find men's cardigans a little hard to navigate when it comes to Ravelry searches and stuff. There just isn't as much selection as there is obviously for the women's cardigans. So the last project that I definitely want to get made is a present for my mum. So she saw me wearing this top pretty quickly after I had made it. And she was like, oh, I want one of those. And I never mind when my mum asks me for knitted presents because she's a knitter herself. So I know she appreciates how much work goes into them. And she can be quite picky with her clothes. So it always feels like a compliment when she likes what I'm wearing enough to ask one for herself. So this is the pinstriped top. It's a pattern I wrote for Knit Picks maybe 2 years ago, and it's knit out of their yarn called Salvage, which is a sport weight recycled cotton. And for my Australian friends, sport weight is 5-ply. So it's constructed interestingly. You cast on in the middle here and then you work side to side. And that's how you can get the vertical stripes because you're actually knitting sideways. And I usually try and buy local yarn, but this yarn is quite specific. It's got a very interesting texture that I think really adds to the design of the top because the top is quite plain. So having the yarn be textured works really nicely. So I actually purchased this when I was in the States at the beginning of the year. It just sort of worked out that we were already there. So I went ahead and bought some while we were on our trip. So she wants the orange color to be the background, so the light blue on my top, and then the white will be the accent stripes. And I'm planning on making it for her as a Mother's Day present, which is at the beginning of May here in Australia. But she and my dad are actually going to be away then, so it's not as time sensitive. I can just get it to her whenever it's done. So my goal is to have both the jacket for my dad and the top for my mum done by the end of May. So if you're keeping score, that is a Ami penguin in the next 4 days, and then a full-size men's cardigan and a full-size woman's t-shirt in 2 months. This is why I was saying that I need to be held accountable. Because if I don't actually tell these things to people, my overly ambitious plans will definitely never happen. So it's going to be a bit of a stretch to get all of that done, but if I do have some spare time, there are some other things that I would like to at least watch for so I'm ready for knitting in the winter. So I've been making a lot of gifts recently and I would like to finally make something for myself. And so I'm planning on making a dress in the winter. So the pattern that I have in mind is called the Harley Pullover. It's by Jenny Williams or Jess Williams. I'll put her actual name up here on the screen. And it is a sweater pattern, but I would like to turn it into a dress. I've looked at the project pages on Ravelry and people make it quite long anyway. It almost looks like a tunic on a lot of people. So I don't think it'll be difficult to extend it out into a dress. Now, the only thing with this is that I've had this pattern in my queue for a really, really long time, but I put it in my queue when I picked patterns more for their knitting experience rather than the finished object. And I'm in a point now in my sort of knitting journey where if I make stuff for myself, I really want it to fit nicely into my wardrobe. So I really like the cable around the neck, but I think that if I put the cable on the arms like it has in the pattern, then I wouldn't really wear it that much. So I'm planning on doing some mods to take that cable out. It will take a bit of maths because stockinette gauge is very different to cable gauge, but it should be pretty straightforward to figure out. So the yarn I'm planning on using for this is Holst Yarn Super Soft. And to be honest, I'm a little intimidated by it because I've heard mixed reviews on working with this yarn. So I know Anushka from the Crimson Stitchery, who's someone who I followed for a while, has a whole video series on how to use this, which is intimidating in and of itself because if you need several videos to explain how to work with the yarn, it sounds like a bit of a scary sounding yarn. But I'll watch it just to make sure that I get whatever tips or tricks I need to make sure that the pattern works out well. So from what I understand, the main thing is that the yarn has a bunch of spinning oil in it still, which from what I understand means that it knits up very differently to how the final fabric turns out after you've washed and blocked it. I'm also a little worried about it because it's in a cone and I've never worked with a cone before, and I'm planning on holding it double. So I don't really know how you hold things double from a cone. I currently am just planning to wind balls off, maybe 100 or 200 grams at a time, and then use it like a regular ball of yarn. But it would be nice to not have to cut this up into smaller pieces because it feels like part of the advantage of having a cone is that it's one long strand. So if anyone has any suggestions for me for how to actually hold this double from the cone, please let me know. Or if the answer is just that I have to break it up into sections, then confirmation of that would be good too. So if you've worked with cone yarn before, any help would be appreciated. The other project that I'm thinking of is a jumper for my daughter. So this is BWM Classic in a color called Hunter Green, I think. And I picked up a couple of balls of this in a D-stash, so it should be enough for a jumper for my daughter. But she doesn't have opinions yet on what she would want it to look like. She just knows that she wants a new jumper for the winter and her favorite color is green. So I'll have to sit down with her and look through Ravelry and see what it is that she's actually thinking of. So it's highly unlikely I'll get either of these two going, but if I can at least swatch and decide on a pattern and a size for both of them, then I'll be very happy, because then I'll be ready to hit the ground running in the winter. So those are all my autumn knitting plans. And if you have any patterns that you're working on or planning on working on this season and you'd like to share, then I'd really love to hear them, because I feel like a lot of people tend to start winter knitting now. And so I'd love to get ideas for what to make in the winter. And also, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, I'm always on the lookout for warmer, wetter patterns. So I'm really curious to see what people are making in the spring. And if you'd like to follow along with how all of my ambitious knitting goes, then I do post a new vlog or podcast episode once a month. So you can subscribe to the channel right here and then hit the bell button down below to be notified of when new videos come up so you don't miss them. And if you'd like to see any previous podcast episodes, then I have a whole playlist of all of them right here. But until next time, I've been Katrina Walser from Oliphant Cat. Happy autumn knitting!